Maggie, I want to start with you. I read an interview you did in the past where you talked about how it was about 7 years from kind of when you first pitched this movie to when it was released, which I'm sure that was an incredible journey to kind of go on there. But kind of, can you tell me a little bit, like, do you remember that first pitch meeting for K-pop Demon Hunters? And how did the movie kind of change from like the first pitch to the time when it came out?
Yeah, it was pitched over a brunch with my producer friend, who is also friends with Chris. And it was literally kind of an elevator pitch. It's a movie about these girls who are K-pop idols, but secretly demon hunters. And he was like, I love it, let's do this. And I thought he was totally joking, but the next week he had a deal ready for me at Sony Pictures Animation. And, it was actually first developed as a lower budget movie, and it was going to be a lot more violent. Rumi was going to be like kind of a mess, a much more messy individual, kind of like a failure of the family, and it was a story about her kind of coming out of that, and and becoming this prideful person, and making her family proud. And then throughout the process, I think we're about 8 months into development, and Christine Belson said, "Guys, I think this is a bigger movie," and so that's when we started to think about just a bigger scope, more kind of hitting all demographics, and that's when Chris joined us, and we started to write the first draft. And it's 7 years, but animation, luckily and thankfully, goes through many different phases. So you have the script phase, and then you start art, and you start digital, where you're actually making the assets, and then you start going into animation, and then there's all these different milestones that you hit. So it's a very rewarding process, even though it's quite long.
Sure, sure. And I'm glad it all turned out so well. I'm sure there were a million stuff to think
Oh
about, but you
yeah.
guys did great. Chris, I'd love to know kind of about how you got involved with the project too. Do you remember like what it was that originally made you like want to be part of K-pop Demon Hunters when you heard about this for the first time? What kind of excited you the most when you first heard about this project?
Yeah, two things. My wife is an author. She's kind of like one of the first Korean American voices in young adult fiction. So she's this very smart, funny, weird person, and she's always was always telling me for years, like, you got to do better female characters. And when I sat down with Maggie, Maggie's like, I have this vision for these girls that are like funny and smart and weird and vengeful and food obsessed, and I was like, oh, I please let me help you. That's been really awesome to see those characters kind of forming a new archetype of like what a role model could be. And the other part, I grew up as a musician as much as an artist, and so same. I mean, when Maggie and we met at some coffee shop, she'd tell me about the movie, and I was trying to play it cool the whole time.
And I was like, I don't think he's into this.
But inside I was like, holy crap, this is the one, because I've wanted to do film about music, and I think one of the things we bonded on really early was this idea, which can sound really cheesy, that you make a film about the power of music as a connective thing. And I had lived that as a musician my whole life, and Maggie's like an OG K-pop fan, and so we both had a lived experience of like how music can transform you. And I think that really helped us find a spine for, I mean, it led to so many things like the Hunters and the Home Moon. All that mythology is a way to try and dramatize that somewhat cheesy concept, but we really believed in it, and it was just, from that point forward, I felt like the movie kind of started to tell us what it wanted.